So today's thing is that you have to complete an assignment project where you have to create a movie application. In that movie application, what we accept as in the voting app, we have had five different services. Now in this assignment project, in this movie application, we have three services: front end, back end, MongoDB. These are all the three services which we will be using. And using the Docker Compose, we will be running this project. So before going further, let me explain the so what was the things before. This is front end, this is back end, this is database. Now, what was the voting application? What was the voting application? Voting application was architecture was like this: voting, Redis, worker, Postgres, result. Here, what is the difference? Here we have only three services: front end, back end, database. How exactly this goes? When you enter anything in the front end application, it goes to the back end for the coding part, means whatever you have done the code, and from the back end it goes to the database to save it or to hit the data, and from the database it goes to the front end to show the result. Now what exactly we are gonna do here in this application, here the source code is already present, but it is not a complete one. We have to make, we have to see, don't think about this Mongo explicitly. You don't have to use, because they have installed. But for us, what we gonna do is that we gonna take this git pull, we gonna clone the code, we gonna pull the code from here to our local machine, to our EC2 instance, and we will make changes in the client and server side. And you have to write Docker file, along with it the Docker file and Docker Compose. How exactly it goes? See, the basic scenario will be: first, you need to create an EC2 instance. You have to install Docker and Docker Compose in it. You have to pull the source code. If you go to this source code URL, there will be the one which you have to take it. This is the explanation link. You can go here. This is a medium where how exactly they created a Express Node Jack GCS. If you want, let me show that also. This is the way how exactly they have done, means how exactly they have used, how exactly they have done. That was the reason they are mentioning it here. But for we will take this git pull, we will take this git pull into our EC2 instance, and we will edit the files means which files we need to edit. You need to figure out which files we need to edit out. Because here, as per the source code, if you see, there is a client and server. Client is a front end, server is a back end. One thing, I will do the front end. I will show you what exactly the changes need to be done from the front end side. You have to figure out what changes has to be done in the back end, which file need to be changed. And for database, you don't have to make any changes directly in the Docker Compose, like in the Redis, what we have used here. Directly for the PostgreSQL, what they have used, they have directly used the image name. Is it like this? Directly just the image name. So the same way you have to mention DB image MongoDB. That's it. That is the only line in the database. But for front end and back end, we have to write two Docker files, I'm going to write the Docker file for the front end, and you have to figure out what to be written on the back end side. And the file should be like this: services. Here, what it will become client, and build. It will become here build, and where exactly dot client, and ports. What is the port name? And the networks. If you want to write network, you can write. If you don't want, you can remove it. Network. Now, in the same way, it goes to the, after that it will be server, and again build dot server, ports, which port it has to run, and the network, and there goes the DP. Again, you have to mention these are the only three portions which you will be having in the Docker Compose file. For first, we have to write Docker files for the front end and back end. Then once they are running perfectly, then you have to check it out using the Docker Compose, keeping all them. Now let's try doing that before starting it. I'm gonna do one thing. As I mentioned, I'm gonna do front end for you, and you have to figure out what file needs to be. I'm going to tell you the file which need to be modified also. You need to figure out what exactly the change can be done, and you have to figure it out running the create. You have to create a movie, you have to delete a movie. This was the assignment they were asking: create a movie, list a movie, delete a movie, update. Whatever you are entering in the front end, the result has to be shown. The result has to be shown to you. Now let me install Docker first. Have you guys understood what was exactly I was saying? Have you guys understood?
Yes, Ashok.
Yes, Ashok.
Tomorrow I'm not gonna take the class. Take your time, complete this assignment, and Sunday we will connect. And I want you to complete this, because this is the best way you will be able to understand why exactly we are using the Docker Compose, how exactly it depends on how exactly it will work out. You will be able to understand. Exactly 5 steps, guys. I have created EC2 instance. I have installed Docker in it. Now I'm gonna, for the Docker Compose, anyways, I'm not gonna run it because now I don't want, because I'm just using Docker. I'm just gonna explain it. Now we have to clone. We have to clone this code. We have to pull this code. So if you do ls, see the movies app is there. Now let's, okay, that's fine. See, the client is the front end, server is the back end. Understand? Client is the front end, server is the back end. Now, what exactly the changes need to be done? I will gonna explain in the front end side so that you will be able to do it in the back end. Exactly. Now we have to go in the client src, in the client source code src, and if you do ls, here you have to make changes in the API. In the API, what is the file? Index.js file. Here they are using node. They are using the node. How you are exactly able to find out? If you go to the client, if you go to the client, they are also mentioned you what the script should be, how the script should be modified, how the script should be worked out. They ask us to use npm, or how exactly we can do that. Let me explain. Now if we do vim index.js, see they have used what is the base URL they are using here? Localhost 3000 API. Here you just have to modify your EC2 IP should be present to run the file, to run the details, what exactly we needed, what exactly we want. You just have to mention your EC2 IP. That's it. That is the first change you have to do it in the front end side. After this, you also have to go back to the home folder. After this, you have to go back to the movies app again, and we have to make changes on the server side. Where exactly on the server side? Why I have changed? That is the URL here. If you see the index.js, if you go to here and if you see the index.js file, the source code API, this index.js is actually hitting this index.js is actually hitting the front end UPI, the front end URL, the front end. If we hit this one, if we run and hit this one, once you run the Docker file, and if you run the Docker container for the first time, if you are running for the Docker file, you have created a Docker file and you run it, and if you hit your EC2 IP dot port, the port which we are running means it is maybe 3000, it may be anything, whatever the run. If it is running, then it will hit the UI. It will show you the create list movies types. Let me do that. Now on the server side, we also need to change the DB. We also need to make the changes in the DB. What exactly we need to change the changes? Vim index.js. Here, see the MongoDB connection, where exactly they are giving. They are giving to some other IP address. Here we have to mention our IP address, our IP, so that this will hit directly to the DB. The data means the data which we are sending should be saved, should be go to our EC2 IP. It will from here it should take to the EC2 IP address. Escape. That's it. That's all the changes we are done. But you have to figure out what needs to be the changes to be done on the server side. On the server side, I have done only for the front end. Now, what exactly we need? We need to create a Docker file first to make sure that whatever we are going to use in the Docker compose, how it is gonna run. So there is no Docker file. Let me create a Docker file. So what should be the commands we have to use? We have to use node application, because the front end and back end both runs on the node application from node 10. And use copy. What you are doing, copy, you are copying all the code of the client, whatever has been present in the client, to the Docker container. Then they have mentioned what they have mentioned here in the client side. What they have mentioned, if you go back to the client and if you see, they were asking us npm, means they are telling us to use the npm, because they were mentioning how exactly the npm needs to be built. So we gonna use run
npm.
install. Now what exactly needs to be done? We have to run it. We have to run it the npm. We have to start the npm. We have to run the npm. This is the simple Docker file. This is a simple Docker file. This is the one which you have to run. Now we will run the Docker. We will run the Docker, and we will be making sure how exactly this. Sorry.
Here we are not exposing to the port, Ashok.
No, it's already been given there. It's already been provided there. We are not going to expand because we will be using the port mapping directly because they are written in the code which port they have to use, that has been mentioned. Now, first build a Docker file. Oh, sorry. Why this much time is taking? See, now it has been running. Now if you see Docker images, now see guys, we don't know which port we have to map. We don't know which port we have to map. At that time, you can just run the Docker. You can directly run the Docker. You can directly run the Docker, and if you do Docker ps, My it has got failed. Let's check out Docker logs minus F container ID. Okay. Here I have mentioned capital S. What was the reason it was failing? These are all warnings. You don't have to consider that. It will be taken anyways. I'm going to tell what exactly the lines you also written in the Docker file for the backend. I'll also tell that one also, but you have to figure out what are all the changes, what are all the changes you have to make on the server side. You have to figure it, you have to figure that one out. I'm going to tell what exactly the file you have to run, but you need to figure out what exactly the modifications need to be done on the server side. Exactly one file needs to be modified. That file will also be explained in the Docker file itself when we are doing it. That you need to figure out, that you need to check it out, how exactly needs to be done. To know, you guys able to understand what is Docker, what exactly we have done? Containers, the file, the build, the layering concept, pull, push, volume, mind mode, the network. Are you
Yes,
guys
Ashok.
Docker
understanding?
Compose. Yes, Ashok.
So if we don't know which port we need to use, we don't know which one they need to use. At that time, just run the image ID, directly run without mapping anything. And once the container has been created, go to Docker logs minus F, the container ID. Use this one. It will mention where exactly is this. See which port it is actually looking on it. Localhost 8000 means we have to open the P2 port is 8000 means the container port is running on port 8000. We have to come out of this. Now we need to just stop the container. We need to stop the container and mention the port 8000 in the P2. Now Docker run minus ITT minus P. You can use the port whatever you want on the P1 side, but for to run the container port, it is running on port 8000. See on your network, it's 8000, and the image ID. Where is the Docker images? The image ID. Now the Docker is running. Now we will hit the port 80 in our local EC2 instance. See guys, list movies. If you list movies, whatever the movies you have created, it will come in the list movies. So if you try to create like test rating, what is the rating? 4. Timing, you mentioned 2:30. And if you add a movie, it will not go further. Why? Because we are not actually have the backend to work on this. We don't have the backend to work on this. If you see here, if I'm adding a movie, it is not going. Why? Because there is no backend, there is no backend. It is going, but it is not able to go for the backend code. That was the reason. So you need to figure out what is the file I need to modify in the server side and how to write. See, the backend Docker file will be the same, only the CMD will be changed. The CMD will be changed. It will be node index.js. This is the only line you need to modify in the backend Docker file. This is the only line, the same 4 lines. It will be the only line you need to modify in the backend Docker file. And if you are using the index.js file, so automatically you have to modify on the server side index.js file. On the server side index.js file. So you need to write this one. You need to write this one in the same Docker file, in a different Docker file for the server side. You need to just change the CMD. The CMD line will be this one, CMD node index.js. This is the line you need to change. All the things will be the same. You don't have to modify anything. You just need to change the file. And which file you need to modify? If we are running on the node index.js, you need to change the file index.js. And in the Docker compose, when you start writing the Docker compose, how the file should be Docker compose .yaml. So how we are gonna write? We will start with services, and how we are gonna write? First, we have to mention the client and where exactly you need to build. Where exactly you need to build on the dir client. This is the file you need to mention on the client, and where exactly the port. The port is 80. What is the port? And the P2 is 8000.
Okay.
If you want to use network, you can use. If you don't want, that's it. We can use FE entire. That's it, guys. This is done. This is Docker Compose for the client. The same way you have to use for the server. The same way you have to mention the other things. Build the port. That's it. You don't have to use any volume. This is the way you have to figure out how the file needs to be created. The Docker Compose file, and for the MongoDB, you just have to mention DB, and you have to mention image. What should be the image? MongoDB. That's it. This is the only thing you have to mention for the DB. Now you need to figure out what you have to write for the server side and the file. And once it has been done, you have to run this Docker Compose where this will open this one. This will open this one, You will create a movie, it will take it in the back end, and once you go to the list movies, it will be showing the movie which you have just added. This is the assignment for you. Any questions if you have, let me know.
No, no, Ashok, as of now. Updating and
So this is a simple, and as I said, you can go to the source code level, and if you have an explanation link, how exactly they have, means the guy who actually created this Git, who actually created, he explained it, how exactly he has done it. So you need to figure out what exactly the changes you have to do, how exactly you can work it out before started creating these things. So that way there should be a Docker compose including all the three services. Three services. Any questions, guys? Understand the architecture. In the voting application, we had 5 applications. There were 2 front ends. There were
Ashok, how
two
does
front.
your Redis will work? No, I mean,
We don't
whatever
have
the
Redis.
no, Ashok, whatever the backend, it's not work. If it's not working, like where will that
It is
backend
not
be
Redis.
saved?
We are not using Redis in this assignment. We are not using Redis. That is the reason here. If you have created this one, and once you created the backend also, it will not take it because there is no Redis. There is no caching at all. We are not doing the caching at all here. We are not doing any caching here at all. Here we are not doing any caching. But if it has been here in this phenomena where they were using Redis, means before the backend is not even up. But if you are using the voting, here they have cached it. But here we are not doing anything. We are not caching it at all. We are directly creating the movie, directly creating. So the backend is not there. So the movie name will not be created at all. It is not cached at all. We are not using the cache at all here. Because the guy who created this, he is not used the cache. He directly mentioned only the client and server. So we don't have to go and barge ahead. So we just use this git, we will pull it and we will make the changes, and we will see whether this will be running on our machines if we are running on that perfectly. So as I mentioned, you have to figure out on the server side, on the back end, what exactly needs to be modified. And see, I'm showing there is already index.js. So you need to figure out what are the changes you may have to do in this one. I'm only telling you in this one what exactly changes you need to do. You need to figure out. If you are running the file, once you made the changes and you're running the Docker file, if you are creating a movie, it should be created when if you go to the list movies. Any questions, guys?
Got it, Ashok.
So these are all the things you need to figure out. This is a good way to use how the Docker Compose will be running. So follow that git pull, and maybe if you want, you can read his overall whatever exactly this guy has done. That way you can try it out. But as I said, you have to figure it out in, and you have to do. This is the best way to learn Docker. This is the best way how exactly it works out, how exactly the file works out, how exactly you are able to use it. You need to figure out. Any questions, guys?
No, Ashok. On Sunday, we need to submit this. Is it Ashok?
I just need the Docker Compose file. I
Okay.
just need your Docker Compose file. If you want, once you make the changes and once you have done everything and the application is running perfectly fine, you can copy this code to your means. Once you already cloned it here, right? So you
Yes.
just go back and save it on your GitHub. So going forward, it will be helpful for you only.
Okay. Sure, Ashok.
It's up to you if you want to save it, but I need the Docker Compose file where you will having all the three services using on the front end, back end, and the DB, where they are connecting to each other and they are using it, and it is working perfectly fine. The application should be running on the Docker Compose. Once you run Docker Compose -f Docker Compose .yaml up -d, so then the -d is a daemon process. So if you are running that, so you will be able to go to the your local EC2 instance dot whatever port you are going to use, 80 or 90, 100, 8000, whatever may be the port you are using, and hitting it and opening that one, creating a movie. And once it has been created, if you go to list movies, the movie should be shown here. This is your assignment. So if you have any questions, whatever may be the Docker and anything you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, we can stop the call. I will upload the assignment and the recording to the my drive, today's drive. And from Sunday, once we start about the orchestration, we will be using a different shared folder.
Ashok, one doubt, Ashok. Yesterday you thought like you thought about the compose thing, no, Ashok, Docker compose.
Yes.
Here, Docker compose -f and the file name which we give, I mean, which we have cloned. After that, we use up and down commands, Ashok. I didn't
Ye-
get the purpose of that up and down.
We are up means we are actually running whatever the services inside the Docker file, whatever the Docker compose file, whatever you have written, we are starting the containers. Up is to start the containers, whatever the services you are using, whatever the containers you are using. Suppose here, if you see, this is the way Docker compose means whatever the files you are having, whatever you have been writing on the docker compose.yaml, whatever -safe docker compose.yaml up. So whatever the services are inside this docker compose, whatever the services are inside this docker compose, we are starting them. See, this is the same way. This is just a docker file. Whatever we run it in the docker file, whatever we run it in the docker file, we are just making them in a way that it can be, means if you want to run multiple containers, means hundreds of containers, so that is the way we are just keeping them in a single file and running them in a single instance. Because as I mentioned, if you have multiple containers and you want to run them, but you don't have to use docker run, and you don't know how many docker containers you are running. So for that reason, we are just using the docker compose, where same the build from where exactly we are building it, command, the volume which you need to use in the docker run command, the port which you are actually run, docker run -add -p -v, the network, the front tier, the back tiers, what is the network we are going to use, and that depends on, you can check it out where exactly it caches and everything, and the build where exactly you need, means the docker file is present on this old application. From there you're going up, means it will start creating the containers, it will start running the containers for you after creating. Down means you are stopping the containers. Up and down is the only purpose. If you want to run in the daemon mode, up -d, it will start running in the daemon mode.
Okay, Ashok.
Did you got it, Punit?
Yes, Ashok. Yes.
Any questions? If you have, I'm going to give 4 more minutes, so let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the call, upload the recording and the assignment to the drive, so you can start working on it. And I want you to practice. I want you to figure out what exactly the changes you need to do it, and what is the Docker Compose file.
Done, Ashok.
Okay, Ashok.
Ashok, like maybe yesterday's class recording has been missed. You have not uploaded it to the drive, Ashok.
I have
It's in the
already
chat.
uploaded it.
It is in the chat. I couldn't find it in the drive. So I
I've just uploaded it yesterday itself. In the
okay.
afternoon only I have did it.
Okay, Ashok, right. I couldn't find it, so I watched the video in the chat itself. The chat only I watched it. So I'll check it once again, Ashok. Maybe it would have I would have missed it.
Oh, where is the Docker dot 4? Oh, okay. I missed it. Sorry. It's my bad. You guys, if you don't have anything, we can stop the call. I'm just uploading the assignment and everything. So you can go through the assignment and you can figure it out what exactly needs to be done.
Sure, Ashok.
Sure, Ashok.
Okay, guys, have a nice day. Stay safe. See you on Sunday at 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
If you
sure,
have
Ashok.
any doubts, anything, you can ping me.
Okay,
Sure,
Ashok.
Ashok.
Sure, sure. Thank you.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
Ashok. Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Ashok.